My 8-year-old granddaughter was sitting right next to me at Sunday dinner, quietly coloring in her book while the whole family chatted around our oak table. Suddenly, she tugged on my sleeve and whispered in my ear, "Grandma Elena, why does Daddy have another family with Miss Chloe from my school?" The fork slipped from my hand and clattered onto my plate. I looked across the table at my son Daniel, laughing and cutting his roast beef, completely unaware that his own daughter had just shattered my world with 6 innocent words. Thanks for joining me today. Before we begin, please like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what city or country you're watching from. I sat frozen in my chair, my heart pounding so hard I was certain everyone could hear it over the gentle clinking of silverware and the soft jazz music playing from the kitchen radio. The familiar sounds of our weekly Sunday dinner suddenly felt distant, like I was hearing them through water. My granddaughter, Sophia, had returned to her coloring book as if she hadn't just dropped a bomb that threatened to destroy everything I thought I knew about my family. I forced myself to look around the table with fresh eyes. There was my daughter-in-law, Olivia, beautiful in her soft blue sweater, carefully cutting bite-sized pieces of roast for herself while discussing her upcoming nursing certification exam. Her voice carried that familiar enthusiasm she always had when talking about her career, completely oblivious to the earthquake that had just occurred 2 feet away from her. She looked so content, so trusting, so blissfully unaware that her entire world might be built on lies. And there was Daniel, my son, the boy I had raised with such hope and pride. At 34, he still had that charming smile that could light up any room, the same one that had gotten him out of trouble countless times as a child. He was animated tonight, telling a story about landing a big client at his sales job, gesturing with his hands the way he always did when he was excited. His wedding ring caught the light from our dining room chandelier as he reached for his water glass, and I found myself staring at it with a sick feeling growing in my stomach. How long had I been blind to whatever was happening right under my nose? I tried to process what Sophia had whispered to me, turning the words over in my mind like puzzle pieces that refused to fit together. Miss Chloe from her school, another family. The innocent way she had asked it, as if she genuinely didn't understand why her father would have 2 different families, as if it was just another question about the confusing adult world she was trying to navigate. My hands trembled slightly as I picked up my napkin and dabbed at my lips, buying myself time to think. I had been a school principal for 35 years before retiring, and I knew children. I knew the difference between childhood fantasy and observed reality. Sophia wasn't making this up. She had seen something, experienced something that led her to believe her father had another family with someone named Miss Chloe. The weight of that knowledge settled on my chest like a stone. I looked at my sweet granddaughter, her head bent over her coloring book, her little tongue poking out slightly in concentration as she carefully stayed within the lines of what looked like a butterfly. She had no idea what she had just shared with me. To her, it was simply another curious thing about the adult world that she wanted her grandmother to explain. But I couldn't explain it, because I didn't understand it myself. I thought about Miss Chloe. I knew there was a teacher at Sophia's elementary school named Chloe something, because Sophia had mentioned her a few times over the past year, always positively. She seemed to like this teacher, had even drawn her a picture once that I remembered seeing stuck to our refrigerator for a few weeks. A pretty young woman with long, dark hair, according to Sophia's descriptions. The roast beef on my plate suddenly looked unappetizing. My stomach churned as I tried to reconcile the Daniel sitting across from me, laughing at something Olivia had said about a difficult patient at the hospital with the possibility that he was living some kind of double life. This was my son, the boy who used to cry when he accidentally stepped on ants as a child. The young man who had been so nervous before proposing to Olivia that he had practiced his speech on me 12 times. How could he be capable of such deception? "Mom, you're being awfully quiet tonight," Daniel said, and I realized he was looking directly at me with a slightly concerned expression. "Everything okay? You look a little pale." The irony of him showing concern for my well-being while potentially betraying his own wife and daughter wasn't lost on me. I managed what I hoped was a reassuring smile, though it felt like it might crack my face. Just thinking about how nice it is to have everyone together, I said, my voice sounding surprisingly normal to my own ears. You know how much I love our Sunday dinners. We love them too, don't we, sweetheart? Olivia said, reaching over to smooth Sophia's hair affectionately. It's the best part of our week. Sophia looked up from her coloring and nodded enthusiastically. Grandma Elena makes the best roast in the whole world, she declared, with the absolute certainty that only an 8-year-old could possess. Well, I don't know about the whole world, I said, my heart breaking a little at her innocent smile. But I'm glad you think so, baby girl. The conversation moved on to other topics. Olivia's work schedule for the upcoming week. Daniel's business trip to Atlanta that he mentioned almost casually, as if it weren't another potential piece of the puzzle that was forming in my mind. Sophia's upcoming school play where she would be playing a tree, complete with brown construction paper costume that she was very excited about. I participated in the conversation, asked the right questions, made the appropriate comments, but part of my mind was spinning, analyzing, trying to make sense of what I had learned. I found myself studying Daniel's face when he mentioned his business trip, looking for signs of deception. Was Atlanta even real? Or was it a cover story for time spent with this mysterious other family? As we finished dinner and moved into our usual routine of clearing the table and settling in the living room for coffee and dessert, I felt like I was performing in a play where everyone else knew their lines except me. The normalcy of it all felt surreal, when my entire understanding of my family had been turned upside down in the span of a whispered sentence. I watched Sophia help her mother stack the dinner plates, chattering about her day at school, and my heart ached with the need to protect her. Whatever was happening, whatever truth lay behind her innocent question, she was caught in the middle of it through no fault of her own. She deserved better than to be confused about why her father had secrets, why she apparently knew about another little girl and had been told not to talk about it. Because that had to be part of it, didn't it? If Sophia knew about Miss Chloe and another family, but had only mentioned it to me in a whisper during a private moment, someone had taught her to keep it secret, and that someone could only be Daniel. The thought made my hands clench into fists in my lap. Using a child to keep your lies hidden was a special kind of cruelty that I never would have imagined my son capable of. As the evening wound down and Daniel's family prepared to leave, I hugged each of them a little tighter than usual. When I bent down to hug Sophia, she whispered in my ear again, "Grandma, will you think about my question? About Daddy's other family?" "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered back, my voice thick with emotion. "Grandma will think about it very carefully." And I would, because if my son was living a double life, if he was betraying the trust of his wife and manipulating his innocent daughter into keeping his secrets, then I had a responsibility to act, not just as a mother, but as a grandmother who would do anything to protect the children she loved. The evening ended with the usual promises to call during the week and plans for next Sunday's dinner. I stood in my doorway and waved goodbye as they drove away. Daniel behind the wheel, Olivia in the passenger seat, and Sophia waving enthusiastically from the back seat through the rear window. But as their taillights disappeared around the corner, I knew that nothing would ever be quite the same again. My granddaughter's whispered question had opened a door that couldn't be closed, and I was going to have to walk through it, no matter where it led. Because the truth, however painful, was always better than living a lie. And if Daniel was forcing his family to live a lie, then it was time for that to end. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Sophia's innocent voice asking about her daddy's other family. By 5 a.m, I gave up trying to rest and made myself a strong cup of coffee, sitting at my kitchen table in my robe as the sun slowly painted the sky pink through my window. 35 years as a school principal had taught me that children rarely lie about the big things. They might fib about brushing their teeth or finishing their homework, but when it came to serious matters involving adults they trusted, they told the truth as they understood it. If Sophia believed her father had another family, then she had seen or heard something that led her to that conclusion. The question was, what exactly had she witnessed? I spent Monday morning going through the motions of my usual routine, but my mind was elsewhere. I watered my African violets on the kitchen windowsill, sorted through my mail, even started a load of laundry. But nothing could distract me from the gnawing need to understand what was happening in my family. Around noon, I made a decision that felt both necessary and terrifying. I called Sophia's school. "Washington Elementary, this is Mrs. Rodriguez. How can I help you?" "Hello, this is Elena Lewis, Sophia Lewis's grandmother. I was wondering if I could speak with her teacher, Miss Chloe. I have some questions about Sophia's upcoming project." There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Lewis, but Sophia is in Mrs. Henderson's third grade class. We do have a Miss Jones who teaches second grade, Chloe Jones. Is it possible you meant her?" My stomach dropped. Chloe Jones. Not Miss Chloe, the teacher that Sophia had mentioned casually over the months, but Miss Chloe Jones, a woman whose last name my granddaughter apparently didn't know or had never shared with me. "Oh, my mistake," I managed, my voice sounding normal despite the way my heart was racing. "I must have misunderstood. Thank you." I hung up the phone with shaking hands. Chloe Jones, a second grade teacher, which meant she worked with children just 2 years younger than Sophia. It would be natural for the teachers to know each other, for Sophia to have met her during school events or in the hallways, but that didn't explain why Sophia thought her father had a family with this woman. I made myself another cup of coffee and settled back at my kitchen table, this time with a notebook and pen. If I was going to figure out what was happening, I needed to approach this systematically, the same way I used to handle complex situations at school. At the top of the page, I wrote, "What I know," and began listing everything Sophia had told me over the past few months that might be relevant. She had mentioned Miss Chloe several times, always positively. She had drawn her a picture. She seemed to like her. But when had these mentions started? I tried to think back through our conversations. It had been gradual, I realized. Not sudden mentions that would have stood out, but casual references that had seemed perfectly normal at the time. Miss Chloe helped me with my reading today. Miss Chloe has pretty hair. Miss Chloe said my drawing was beautiful, but Sophia wasn't even in Miss Chloe's class. I started a new section. Questions that need answers. Why would Sophia be spending time with a teacher who wasn't hers? How would she know enough about this woman to think she had a family with Daniel? And most importantly, what had made an 8-year-old child conclude that her father had 2 families? Tuesday arrived, and I found myself thinking about Daniel's schedule. He worked in sales for a medical equipment company, which meant he was often out of the office visiting clients. His schedule was flexible, which had always seemed like a blessing when Sophia was younger and needed someone to pick her up from school or take her to doctor's appointments. But now, I wondered if that flexibility was being used for something else entirely. I decided to test a theory. Around 3:15, the time when elementary school dismissed, I drove to Washington Elementary. I told myself I was just being curious, just wanting to see if I could spot this Miss Chloe Jones and get a sense of who she was. I parked across the street from the school and watched as children poured out of the building, finding their parents in the pickup line or boarding buses. I scanned the teachers standing outside, supervising the dismissal, looking for a young woman with dark hair who might match Sophia's descriptions. And then I saw her. She was beautiful, I had to admit. Late 20s, with long dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, wearing a sunny yellow dress that made her look fresh and approachable. She was helping a little girl with a backpack, smiling warmly as she made sure the child found her correct bus. But what made my blood run cold was what I saw next. A silver sedan pulled up to the curb, and Miss Chloe Jones walked over to it with a small girl by her side. A little girl with dark hair and features that looked hauntingly familiar. As they approached the car, the driver's side window rolled down, and I got a clear view of the man behind the wheel. It was Daniel. I watched in shock as my son smiled and waved at the little girl, who ran around to the passenger side and climbed into the front seat. Miss Chloe leaned down to the driver's window, and even from a distance, I could see the intimacy in their body language. This wasn't a teacher speaking to a parent about a student. This was a woman talking to someone she cared deeply about. Daniel reached out and touched her face gently, a gesture so tender and familiar that it made my heart break for Olivia. Miss Chloe smiled and said something that made him laugh, then leaned down further and kissed him. Not a quick peck on the cheek, but a real kiss, the kind shared between people who were in love. The little girl in the front seat was chattering excitedly, and I could see Daniel's face light up as he listened to her. She was beautiful, maybe 6 years old, with Daniel's eyes and his smile. There was no mistaking the family resemblance, and no mistaking the easy familiarity between them. This wasn't just an affair. This was a second life, complete with a second daughter. I sat in my car for several minutes after they drove away, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. Everything I thought I knew about my son, everything I believed about the kind of man he was, had just been shattered as completely as if someone had taken a hammer to my heart. Daniel wasn't just cheating on his wife. He was maintaining two complete families, two separate lives, two sets of people who loved and depended on him. And somehow, in the middle of all of this deception, my innocent granddaughter had become aware of the truth that none of the adults in her life wanted to acknowledge. The drive home was a blur. I kept seeing Daniel's face as he looked at that little girl, the same expression of paternal love and pride that I had seen him wear when looking at Sophia. He cared about both of his daughters, that much was clear. But how could he live with himself, knowing that his love for one family was built on lies told to the other? Back in my kitchen, I added new information to my notebook with hands that shook with rage and heartbreak. I had visual confirmation of Daniel's relationship with Chloe Jones. I had seen his other daughter, the child whose existence Sophia somehow knew about, and I had witnessed the casual intimacy that spoke of a long-term relationship, not a brief affair. But I still had so many questions. How long had this been going on? Did Olivia have any suspicions? How much did Sophia really know, and how had she learned about it? And most importantly, what was I going to do with this devastating knowledge? That evening, Daniel called me, as he often did on weekday nights, just to check in and see how I was doing. "Hi, Mom. Just wanted to say hello and see if you need anything from the store. I'm running some errands after work." Errands. The casual lie rolled off his tongue so easily that I wondered how many others I had believed over the years without question. "That's sweet of you, honey," I managed, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "But I'm fine. How was your day?" "Oh, same old thing. Meetings, client calls, the usual sales grind." Another lie. He had been at an elementary school, picking up a little girl who called him Daddy, sharing intimate moments with a woman who wasn't his wife. "Well, don't work too hard," I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "Give my love to Olivia and Sophia." "I will, Mom. Love you too." After I hung up, I sat in my living room and cried for the first time since my husband had died 10 years earlier. I cried for Olivia, who trusted her husband completely. I cried for Sophia, who was being forced to keep secrets that no child should have to carry. I cried for the little girl I had seen today, who probably had no idea that her father had another family, and I cried for myself, because the son I had raised and loved was not the man I thought he was, and I had no idea how to reconcile those two versions of Daniel in my heart. But as I wiped my tears and looked at the notebook full of evidence sitting on my coffee table, I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't let this continue. Too many people were being hurt by Daniel's lies, and as much as it would destroy me to expose him, someone had to protect the innocent people caught in his web of deception. Tomorrow, I would start figuring out exactly how extensive this double life really was, because if I was going to act, I needed to know everything. Wednesday morning found me sitting in my car outside Daniel's office building at 7:30, feeling like a spy in a movie I never wanted to be part of. I had barely slept again, my mind churning with questions that demanded answers. If my son was living a double life, I needed to understand just how deep his deception went. I watched Daniel's silver sedan pull into the parking lot right on schedule. He looked perfectly normal as he got out of his car, adjusting his tie and checking his phone before walking into the building with the confident stride of a successful salesman. To anyone watching, he appeared to be exactly what he claimed to be, a hardworking family man starting another ordinary day at the office. But I now knew better. I waited until 8:15, then called his office number from my cell phone. "Good morning, Meditech Solutions. This is Daniel Lewis." "Daniel, honey, it's Mom. I'm sorry to bother you at work, but I was wondering if you could help me with something this afternoon. I need to pick up a prescription, and my car is making that funny noise again." "Of course, Mom. What time do you need me?" "Would around 3 o'clock work? I know you're busy, but 3 is perfect. I don't have any client meetings this afternoon, so I can easily break away. I'll pick you up at 2:45. I felt sick as I hung up. Another lie, delivered so smoothly that if I hadn't seen him yesterday with my own eyes, I would have believed him completely. There were no client meetings because he would be with his other family, playing father to his secret daughter. I drove home and spent the morning pacing my house like a caged animal, checking and rechecking the clock. At 2:30, I positioned myself in my living room window with a clear view of the street, waiting to see if Daniel would actually show up or if he would call with some excuse about an emergency meeting. At exactly 2:45, his car pulled into my driveway. "Ready to go, Mom?" he asked when I opened the door, his smile as genuine and loving as it had always been. "We can stop for lunch after your prescription if you want." My treat. The casual kindness of the offer made my heart ache. This was still my son, the boy who remembered my birthday every year and called to check on me when the weather was bad. But he was also a man living a lie so complex that I was only beginning to understand its scope. "That sounds lovely, honey," I said, allowing him to help me into his car like the devoted son he appeared to be. We drove to the pharmacy, and Daniel waited patiently while I picked up a prescription I didn't actually need. Over lunch at a small cafe downtown, he asked about my garden, my book club, my weekly bridge game with the neighbors. He seemed genuinely interested in my answers, laughing at my stories about Mrs. Patterson's terrible cooking at last week's potluck. But I kept thinking about the little girl I had seen climbing into his car the day before. Did she know about me? Did she call him Daddy the way Sophia did? And what lies was he telling Chloe about where he went when he wasn't with them? "You seem a little distracted today, Mom," Daniel said as we shared a piece of apple pie. "Everything okay?" The irony of him expressing concern about my emotional state was almost unbearable. Just thinking about getting older, I suppose, wondering about the choices we make and how they affect the people we love. "You've made wonderful choices," he said without hesitation. "Look at how you raised me and Aunt Patricia. Look at the thousands of kids whose lives you touched as a principal. You have nothing to regret." The sincerity in his voice was devastating. He genuinely believed what he was saying, even as he was living a life that would destroy everyone who trusted him. After lunch, Daniel drove me home and walked me to my door, kissing my cheek before he left. "Thanks for letting me take you out, Mom. I needed the break from work more than I realized." "Anytime, sweetheart. Drive safely." I watched him back out of my driveway, then quickly got into my own car. I had maybe a 20-minute head start before he would arrive at the school to pick up his secret daughter, and I intended to use every minute of it. This time, I parked in a different location where I had a better view of the pickup area. I arrived just as the dismissal bell rang and watched the familiar chaos of children finding their rides home. I spotted Miss Chloe immediately, standing near the main entrance in a pretty green dress, her hair catching the afternoon sunlight. But today, I was watching more carefully, looking for details I had missed before. The way she checked her phone repeatedly, as if waiting for a message. The way she kept scanning the pickup line, clearly looking for someone specific. And when Daniel's car appeared, the way her entire demeanor changed, her face lighting up with a smile that spoke of deep affection and anticipation. The little girl appeared at her side almost immediately, a beautiful child wearing a pink backpack and carrying what looked like an art project. She ran to Daniel's car with the enthusiasm of a child who adored her father, and he got out to hug her properly before helping her into the car. I rolled down my window slightly, hoping to catch some of their conversation, and was rewarded with fragments that made my blood boil. "Daddy, I made you a picture of our family." The little girl's voice carried clearly in the afternoon air. "I can't wait to see it, Princess. Did you have a good day at school?" "Miss Chloe helped me with my math, and I got all the problems right." "That's my smart girl. I'm so proud of you." The easy, natural affection between them was undeniable. This wasn't a man visiting a child occasionally. This was a father who was actively involved in his daughter's daily life, who knew her teachers and her struggles and her achievements. Miss Chloe approached the car and leaned down to the driver's window, and this time I was close enough to hear their conversation. "How was your day?" she asked Daniel, reaching through the window to touch his hand. "Better now," he replied, bringing her hand to his lips to kiss it gently. "I missed you both." "Daddy, can we go get ice cream?" the little girl asked from the passenger seat. "Mommy said if I was good at school today, we could get ice cream." "Mommy," the little girl called Chloe Mommy. "Of course we can, Ava. What flavor do you want?" Ava. Her name was Ava, and she was probably around 6 years old, which meant she had been born around the time Daniel was getting serious with Olivia. The timeline made me feel physically ill. "I want strawberry," Ava announced, "and I want to sit at the table with the red chairs like last time." "Strawberry it is, Princess. Chloe, are you coming with us?" "I wouldn't miss it," she said, walking around to get into the back seat, "but I need to change clothes first. Give me 5 minutes? Take all the time you need. We'll wait." I watched Miss Chloe disappear into the school building and emerge a few minutes later in jeans and a casual sweater, looking less like a teacher and more like a young mother heading out for a family outing, which I realized with growing horror was exactly what she was. As they drove away, Daniel and Chloe laughing at something Ava had said, I sat in my car trying to process what I had witnessed. This wasn't just an affair with a secret child. This was a complete alternate family with traditions and routines and the kind of everyday intimacy that develops over years of shared life. Daniel was living as a husband and father to Chloe and Ava, while simultaneously living as a husband and father to Olivia and Sophia. He was managing 2 complete family identities, maintaining relationships with 2 women who both believed they were the center of his world, and somehow making it work well enough that neither woman seemed to suspect the truth. The scope of the deception was staggering, the planning it must require, the careful management of schedules and stories and expectations, the sheer emotional energy it must take to be fully present for 2 different families. How was it even possible? I drove home in a daze, my notebook now filled with new, devastating information. Daniel's other daughter was named Ava, and she was roughly the same age as Sophia. Chloe clearly believed she was in a committed relationship with Daniel, calling herself Ava's mother and behaving like a woman who expected a future with the man she loved. And Daniel was playing both roles convincingly, showing up as a devoted partner and father in both of his lives. That evening, Olivia called to tell me about Sophia's upcoming school play rehearsal schedule. She's so excited about being a tree, Olivia laughed. She's been practicing her lines in front of the mirror every night. Daniel thinks it's the cutest thing he's ever seen. The mention of Daniel's name made my stomach clench. I'm sure he does. He's always been so proud of her. He really is. He never misses anything important to her, you know? Soccer games, school events, parent-teacher conferences. I'm so lucky to have a husband who's such a devoted father. The innocent trust in Olivia's voice was like a knife to my heart. She had no idea that the devoted father she praised was splitting his attention between 2 daughters, that the husband she trusted was living an entirely separate life just a few miles away. "You are lucky," I managed to say, though the words felt like ashes in my mouth. Daniel has always been full of surprises. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at my notebook, trying to figure out my next move. I had visual confirmation of Daniel's double life, but I still didn't understand the full scope of his deception. How long had this been going on? How did he manage the logistics of maintaining 2 families? And what did Sophia really know about her father's secret life? Most importantly, what was I going to do with this information? Because every day I stayed silent was another day that innocent people continued to live a lie, another day that my granddaughter carried the burden of a secret she was too young to understand. I made a decision as I closed my notebook for the night. Tomorrow, I would start digging deeper. I would find out exactly how extensive Daniel's deception was. And then I would figure out how to end it without destroying the innocent people caught in his web of lies. Because one way or another, the truth was going to come out. And when it did, I intended to be the one controlling how it happened. Thursday morning, I did something I never thought I would do. I broke into my own son's house. Not literally, of course. Olivia had given me a spare key years ago for emergencies, and I still had it on my keychain. But using it to enter their home while they were both at work felt like the deepest betrayal of trust, even though I knew Daniel had betrayed all of us far worse. I waited until 9:30, when I was certain Olivia would be settled into her shift at the hospital and Daniel would be wherever he actually spent his days. Then I let myself into their beautiful 2-story home, my hands shaking as I turned the key in the lock. The house felt different knowing what I now knew. The family photos lining the hallway seemed like props in an elaborate performance. Wedding pictures of Daniel and Olivia smiling on the happiest day of their lives. Baby photos of Sophia, Christmas mornings and birthday parties and vacation snapshots that told the story of what appeared to be a loving, committed family. But were any of those smiles genuine? Had Daniel been thinking about his other family, even on his wedding day? I started in Daniel's home office, a small room off the living room where he claimed to do paperwork in the evenings. The desk was neat and organized, with client files arranged in labeled folders. But I wasn't looking for his legitimate business. I was looking for evidence of his secret life. In the bottom drawer, hidden beneath a stack of old insurance papers, I found a second checkbook. Not the joint account he shared with Olivia, but a personal checking account I had never heard him mention. The register showed regular deposits from his salary, but also withdrawals that made my stomach drop. Monthly payments to C. Jones for $1,500. Payments labeled as child support to something called Little Stars Daycare, purchases at toy stores and children's clothing shops, even a payment to a place called Tiny Tots Photography for what appeared to be family portraits. He wasn't just supporting his secret family financially, he was fully participating in their lives, paying for daycare and clothes and photographs, creating memories and traditions that mirrored what he did with Olivia and Sophia. I photographed every page of the checkbook with my phone, my hands trembling with rage. The earliest entries dated back almost 7 years, which meant this double life had begun before Daniel even married Olivia. He had been planning this deception from the very beginning, building 2 families simultaneously while both women believed they were his only love. In a folder marked Insurance, I found something even more devastating. A life insurance policy that listed both Olivia and Chloe as beneficiaries, with Sophia and Ava both named as secondary beneficiaries. Daniel had legally acknowledged both women and both children, creating official documentation of his dual existence. The policy was worth $500,000, split equally between his 2 families. Even in death, Daniel had planned to continue his elaborate balancing act. My phone buzzed with a text message and my heart nearly stopped when I saw Daniel's name on the screen. "Hey Mom, want to grab lunch today? I'm free around noon." Another lie, another casual deception offered with the same loving tone he had used since childhood. I typed back, "Can't today, honey, maybe this weekend?" and returned to my search with renewed determination. In the back of his desk drawer, I found a second cell phone, not his usual iPhone, but an older Android device hidden beneath a stack of business cards. When I turned it on, it was password protected, but the lock screen showed dozens of missed calls and text messages from my love and princess. I didn't need to see the messages to understand what they contained. This was Daniel's secret communication device, the phone he used to maintain his relationship with Chloe and Ava when he was supposed to be focused on his legitimate family. The systematic nature of his deception was breathtaking. This wasn't a man who had fallen into an affair and gotten in over his head. This was someone who had methodically constructed an elaborate double life, complete with separate financial accounts, communication devices, and legal documentation. As I prepared to leave, I took one last look around their living room. Sophia's artwork covered the refrigerator, and her favorite stuffed animal sat on the couch where she had left it that morning. This was her home, her safe space, the foundation of everything she understood about her family, and it was all built on lies. I locked the house and drove home, my mind reeling with the scope of what I had discovered. Daniel wasn't just cheating on his wife. He was living as two completely different people, maintaining parallel lives with such precision that neither family suspected the other's existence. But I still had questions that demanded answers. How did he manage his time so carefully that neither woman noticed his absences? What did he tell Chloe about why they couldn't live together? And most importantly, how much did Sophia really know about her father's secret life? That afternoon, I called my sister Patricia, the only person I trusted with something this devastating. "Elena, you sound terrible. What's wrong?" "Patricia, I need you to sit down. What I'm about to tell you is going to shock you, but I need someone to help me figure out what to do." For the next hour, I told her everything. The whispered revelation at Sunday dinner, my surveillance of the school pickup, the evidence I had found in Daniel's house. Patricia listened in growing horror, occasionally gasping or asking clarifying questions, but never once suggesting that I might be mistaken. My God, Elena, that poor girl, both of those poor girls, and Olivia, she has no idea? None. She trusts him completely. She talks about how lucky she is to have such a devoted husband and father. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, but I can't let this continue. Too many people are being hurt by his lies, and Sophia is caught in the middle of it. She shouldn't have to carry her father's secrets. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But Elena, this is going to destroy everything. Are you prepared for that? I looked at the notebook filled with evidence of my son's deception, then at the family photos on my mantle showing happier times when I believed Daniel was the man he appeared to be. I have to be, I said quietly, because the truth is better than living a lie, no matter how much it hurts. Friday afternoon, I sat across from Marcus Thompson, my neighbor and oldest friend, watching his face grow pale as I shared my devastating discovery. Marcus had been a family lawyer for 40 years before retiring, and I needed his professional wisdom about the legal implications of Daniel's double life. "Elena, this is far worse than a simple affair," Marcus said, setting down his coffee cup with shaking hands. "What you're describing is systematic fraud, bigamy, technically even without legal marriage certificates, and the financial deception." "What about the children?" I interrupted, my voice breaking slightly. "Sophia and Ava. They're both innocent in this, and they're going to be destroyed when the truth comes out." Marcus leaned back in his chair, his weathered face creased with concern. "That's the hardest part. Both girls are going to need serious emotional support. Sophia will learn her father isn't who she thought he was, and Ava will discover her entire family structure was built on lies. And Olivia and Chloe? Olivia will have grounds for divorce and significant financial claims. But Chloe—" Marcus paused, choosing his words carefully. "Chloe may face legal complications. If she knew Daniel was married, she could be considered complicit in fraud. But if she believed they were in an exclusive relationship, she's as much a victim as Olivia." I thought about the tender way Chloe had kissed Daniel, the easy familiarity between them. She wasn't acting like a woman who knew she was sharing her partner. She was acting like a woman in love with a man she believed loved only her. "I need to know how much Sophia really understands," I said. "She asked me about Daniel's other family, but I don't know if she sees it as wrong or if she thinks it's normal." "Children that age don't understand adult relationships fully," Marcus replied, "but they do understand secrets and lies. If Daniel has been asking her to keep quiet about what she's seen, she knows something isn't right." That evening, I made a decision that felt both necessary and heartbreaking. I called Olivia and asked if Sophia could spend Saturday afternoon with me while she and Daniel went out for their monthly date night. "That would be wonderful, Elena. Daniel's been so stressed with work lately, and I think we both need some couple time. Sophia loves her sleepovers with Grandma." The casual mention of Daniel's stress made my stomach clench. Of course he was stressed. Managing 2 complete families would exhaust anyone. But Olivia attributed it to work pressure, not knowing her husband was living an impossible double life. Saturday arrived gray and drizzly, perfect weather for the difficult conversation I needed to have with my granddaughter. Sophia bounced into my house carrying her overnight bag and her favorite stuffed rabbit, chattering excitedly about the movie she wanted to watch and the pancakes she hoped I would make for breakfast. We spent the afternoon baking cookies and playing board games, but I was waiting for the right moment to address the elephant in the room. That moment came when Sophia was helping me wash dishes after dinner. "Grandma Elena," she said quietly, scrubbing a mixing bowl with unusual concentration, "remember what I asked you at Sunday dinner about Daddy's other family?" My heart clenched. "Yes, sweetheart, I remember." "I've been thinking about it a lot. Is it bad that Daddy has 2 families? Sometimes I see my friends' daddies with other kids at school, but they don't act like daddies with them." I dried my hands carefully, buying myself time to find the right words. "Sophia, can you tell me more about what you've seen, about Miss Chloe and the other little girl?" Sophia's face scrunched up in concentration. "Well, Daddy picks up Ava from school sometimes. That's Miss Chloe's daughter, and they go places together like we do. Ava calls him Daddy too, and he hugs her the same way he hugs me." "How do you know about this, baby?" "I saw them once when Mommy took me to get ice cream near my school. Daddy was there with Miss Chloe and Ava, and they looked really happy. But Daddy told me it was a secret, that I shouldn't tell Mommy because it would make her sad." There it was. Daniel had explicitly asked his 8-year-old daughter to lie to her mother about his secret family. He had made Sophia complicit in his deception, forcing her to carry the burden of adult secrets that no child should have to bear. "Sophia, listen to me very carefully," I said, kneeling down to her eye level. "It's never okay for grown-ups to ask children to keep secrets from their parents. If something feels wrong or confusing, you should always be able to talk to the adults who love you." "But Daddy said it would hurt Mommy's feelings. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, even when they love us, and sometimes keeping secrets hurts people more than telling the truth." Sophia nodded slowly, her young mind processing concepts that were far too complex for her age. "Grandma, do you think Daddy made a mistake?" I pulled her into my arms, holding her close as I struggled with how to answer. "I think your daddy is confused about some very important things, but I want you to know that none of this is your fault, and it doesn't change how much he loves you or how much I love you. Will everything be okay?" "I don't know yet, sweetheart, but I promise you that the grown-ups who love you are going to work very hard to make sure you're safe and happy no matter what happens." That night, after Sophia fell asleep clutching her stuffed rabbit, I sat at my kitchen table and made a plan. I couldn't let this continue. Too many people were living lies, and my granddaughter was being forced to participate in a deception that was already causing her confusion and guilt. But I also couldn't act rashly. Whatever I did had to protect the children first, even if it meant destroying the adults who had created this mess. I picked up my phone and called Patricia. "I know what I have to do," I told her, "but I'm going to need your help. Whatever you need, Elena. Those children deserve better than this. They do, and I'm going to make sure they get it, even if it costs me my relationship with my son." The truth was going to come out, and when it did, I was going to be there to help pick up the pieces for the innocent people Daniel's lies had shattered. Sunday morning, I woke up with absolute clarity about what needed to happen. After a sleepless night organizing every piece of evidence, I knew exactly how to end Daniel's web of lies while protecting the people who mattered most. I spread everything across my dining room table like a prosecutor preparing for trial. Photographs from my phone showing Daniel with Chloe and Ava, copies of the secret bank statements, pictures of the hidden cell phone and insurance documents. Marcus had helped me organize it into a timeline that told the complete story of Daniel's 7-year deception. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Patricia arrived at 9 o'clock as planned, carrying a folder of her own. "I spent yesterday researching support services for children in family crisis situations," she said, setting down her papers. "If we're doing this, we need to be prepared to help Sophia and Ava through what comes next." "What about counselors?" "I found 3 child psychologists who specialize in family trauma. And Elena, I think we should contact Chloe first, before the confrontation with Daniel." I looked up sharply. "Why?" "Because if she truly doesn't know about Olivia and Sophia, she deserves a chance to protect Ava. This is going to destroy that little girl's world too." My heart ached thinking about 6-year-old Ava learning that her daddy had another family, that her entire understanding of her life was built on lies. But Patricia was right. Chloe needed to know what was coming so she could prepare to help her daughter. How do we approach her? Carefully. If she knows about the marriage and chose to participate anyway, she might warn Daniel. But if she's innocent, Patricia paused. "Elena, from what you've observed, does she act like a woman who knows she's sharing her man?" I thought about the tender kisses, the family outings, the way Chloe looked at Daniel with complete trust and love. No, she acts like a woman who believes she's in an exclusive relationship. Then she's going to be as devastated as Olivia. I made the decision that felt both terrifying and necessary. "I'll call the school tomorrow and ask to speak with her privately. I'll tell her I'm Sophia's grandmother and there's something important she needs to know about Daniel." "What about Daniel?" "Tuesday evening. I'll invite him and Olivia for dinner, just like any other week. But this time, I'll have everything ready to show them both the truth simultaneously." Patricia reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Are you sure you're ready for this? Once you do this, there's no going back. Your relationship with Daniel will never be the same." I looked at the evidence of my son's betrayal scattered across my table, then at the family photos on my mantle showing happier times when I believed he was the man he pretended to be. "Patricia, my son is forcing an 8-year-old to keep secrets that are eating her alive. He's stolen 7 years from 2 women who love him. He's created a 6-year-old who doesn't even know her father is living a lie." My voice grew stronger with each word. Whatever relationship I thought I had with Daniel was built on deception anyway. I'd rather lose a son who's a fraud than protect a man who's destroying innocent people. Then we do this right. We protect the children first, support the women he's betrayed, and let Daniel face the consequences of his choices. I nodded, feeling the weight of what we were about to unleash, but also feeling something I hadn't experienced in weeks, the peace that comes with choosing truth over comfortable lies. Tuesday couldn't come soon enough. Tuesday afternoon, I had the most difficult conversation of my life. I called Washington Elementary and asked to speak privately with Miss Chloe Jones during her planning period. "Mrs. Lewis, is everything okay with Sophia?" Chloe's voice was warm and concerned, exactly what you'd expect from a caring teacher. "Miss Jones, I need to speak with you about something very serious. It's not about Sophia's schoolwork, but it does involve my family. Could we meet privately after school today?" There was a pause. "Of course. Is 3:30 okay? I can meet you in my classroom." At 3:30, I sat across from Chloe Jones in her cheerful 2nd grade classroom, surrounded by colorful bulletin boards and tiny desks. She was even prettier up close, with kind eyes and an open, trusting expression that made what I was about to do feel like cruelty. "Miss Jones, what I'm about to tell you will be shocking, but I need you to know the truth about Daniel Lewis." Her face immediately brightened at the mention of his name. "Oh, you know Daniel? He's wonderful, isn't he? I've been meaning to ask him about bringing Ava to meet more of his family." My heart broke for her. "Miss Jones, Daniel is my son, and he's married to a woman named Olivia. They have an 8-year-old daughter named Sophia." The color drained from Chloe's face. "That's impossible. Daniel isn't married. We've been together for 6 years. We're planning—" She trailed off, her hand instinctively moving to a small diamond ring on her right hand that I hadn't noticed before. "He proposed to you?" "Last month. We were waiting to tell Ava together." Her voice was barely a whisper. "You're saying he has another family? Another daughter?" I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo from Daniel and Olivia's wedding album that I had taken from their house. "This was taken 5 years ago, I'm sorry, but Daniel has been lying to you from the beginning." Chloe stared at the photo for a long moment, then buried her face in her hands and began to sob. "Oh God, Ava, what am I going to tell Ava? She loves him so much. She thinks he's going to be her daddy forever." "I know this is devastating, but I needed you to know before I confront Daniel tonight. You and Ava deserve time to prepare." "Tonight?" Chloe looked up with red, swollen eyes. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to tell Olivia the truth. She deserves to know." Does she know about us at all?" "Nothing. She thinks Daniel is completely faithful to her." Chloe's tears came harder. 6 years. 6 years of my life. And it was all a lie. Every promise, every plan we made for the future, every time he said he loved me. I believe he does love you, in his own way, but that doesn't excuse what he's done. 2 hours later, I stood in my kitchen preparing dinner for what would be the last normal family meal we would ever share. Daniel and Olivia arrived right on time, Sophia skipping ahead of them with her usual enthusiasm. "Grandma Elena, I brought you a picture I drew of our family." I knelt down to accept her artwork, my heart breaking as I looked at the careful crayon drawing of stick figures labeled Mommy, Daddy, me, and Grandma. Such a simple, innocent representation of what she believed her family to be. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Why don't you put it on the refrigerator?" As we sat down to dinner, everything felt surreal. Daniel carved the roast, joking with Olivia about her challenging day at the hospital. Olivia helped Sophia cut her vegetables, praising her for using good table manners. They looked like the perfect family, and I was about to destroy that illusion forever. After dinner, I suggested Sophia play in the living room while the adults had coffee. "Actually," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart, "there's something important I need to discuss with both of you." Daniel looked up with mild curiosity. "What's going on, Mom?" I placed the folder of evidence on the table between them. "I need to tell you both about Daniel's other family, about Chloe Jones and his daughter Ava." Olivia laughed, thinking it was some kind of joke. "What are you talking about, Elena?" But Daniel's face had gone white. He knew exactly what I was talking about. "Daniel," I said quietly, "would you like to explain to your wife about the woman you proposed to last month and the 6-year-old daughter you've been supporting for years?" The silence that followed was deafening, and in that moment, our family as we knew it ceased to exist. The explosion that followed my revelation was everything I had feared and more. Daniel's face cycled through shock, denial, and finally rage as he realized the scope of what I had uncovered. Olivia's initial disbelief crumbled as I methodically presented photograph after photograph, bank statement after bank statement, building an undeniable case against the man she had trusted with her life. "You followed me?" Daniel shouted, his mask of deception finally falling away. "You spied on your own son?" "I protected my granddaughter from a father who was teaching her to lie," I replied calmly, the same granddaughter whose innocent questions started all of this. Olivia sat in stunned silence, staring at photos of Daniel with Ava, her hands shaking as she processed the evidence of his double life. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. 6 years? She's 6 years old, which means... She looked up at Daniel with growing horror. "You were with her before we got married. Our entire marriage has been built on lies." "Olivia, let me explain." "Explain what? How you proposed to another woman last month? How you have a daughter I've never heard of? How you've been stealing money from our family to support your other family?" Daniel's attempts at manipulation and blame-shifting fell flat against the mountain of evidence I had assembled. Every lie he tried to tell was met with photographic proof, every excuse demolished by bank records and timeline documentation. From the living room, we could hear Sophia playing with her toys, blissfully unaware that her world was imploding just a few feet away. That innocent sound seemed to strengthen Olivia's resolve. "I want you out," she said with surprising firmness. "Tonight, I don't care where you go, but you're not sleeping under the same roof as my daughter ever again." Within an hour, Daniel had packed a bag and left, his parting words a bitter accusation that I had destroyed our family out of spite. But as I watched Olivia hold Sophia and begin the difficult process of explaining that Daddy wouldn't be living with them anymore, I knew I had done the right thing. The next few weeks were devastating, but necessary. Marcus helped Olivia file for divorce and custody arrangements. The financial fraud came to light when investigators discovered the extent of Daniel's deception, including credit cards and loans taken out in false names. Chloe's world collapsed just as completely. The elementary school placed her on administrative leave when word spread about her involvement with a married father from the school community. Though she was as much a victim as Olivia, the scandal followed her everywhere. But in the midst of all the destruction, something beautiful began to emerge. Olivia found strength she never knew she possessed, fighting fiercely for Sophia's well-being and future. She started therapy, both for herself and for Sophia, to help them process the trauma of Daniel's betrayal. Most surprisingly, Olivia and Chloe eventually met. What could have been a confrontation between rivals became a meeting of two women united by their shared victimization. They found comfort in each other's understanding of Daniel's manipulation and slowly began building a support system for their daughters. Sophia struggled with the truth about her father, but with professional help and the unwavering love of her mother and me, she began to heal. The confusion about keeping secrets lifted from her young shoulders, replaced by the security of knowing the adults in her life would always tell her the truth. As for Daniel, he faced consequences that extended far beyond losing his families. The financial fraud charges, the custody battles, and the complete destruction of his reputation in our community left him isolated and bitter. He blamed everyone but himself for the collapse of his elaborate deception. I made my peace with losing my son long before the legal proceedings ended. The Daniel I had raised was gone, replaced by a man whose capacity for deception I could never have imagined. But in choosing truth over family loyalty, I had gained something more valuable, the knowledge that I had protected the innocent people caught in his web of lies. 6 months later, I sat in my garden watching Sophia and Ava play together during one of their supervised visits. The two little girls, half-sisters who had never known about each other, were building fairy houses out of twigs and flowers, their laughter filling the air with hope for the future. Olivia and Chloe sat nearby, sharing coffee and planning their children's upcoming school year. They had become unlikely friends, bonded by their shared experience and their commitment to raising their daughters with honesty and love. "Thank you," Olivia said to me that afternoon as we watched the girls play. "I know it cost you everything to tell the truth, but you saved us from living a lie forever." "You saved yourselves," I replied. "I just opened the door." Sometimes the greatest act of love is destroying what appears to be perfect in order to build something real. Daniel's elaborate deception had created the illusion of multiple happy families, but it was all smoke and mirrors. The truth had been painful, devastating even, but it had also set everyone free to build authentic lives based on honesty rather than lies. As I tucked Sophia into bed that night, she looked up at me with the clear, trusting eyes of a child who no longer carried adult secrets. "Grandma Elena, I'm glad you answered my question about Daddy's other family." "Why is that, sweetheart?" "Because now I don't have to keep secrets anymore, and Ava doesn't have to wonder why her daddy has to leave sometimes. The truth is better, even when it's sad." From the mouth of an 8-year-old came the wisdom that had guided my every decision. The truth is always better than living a lie, no matter how much it hurts. And in that moment, I knew that everything we had endured, all the pain and destruction and heartbreak, had been worth it to give these children the gift of an honest life. Did you enjoy the story? Tell me what you would have done in their place. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. If you'd like to support my work, please subscribe. Thank you for being here. Your support means the world. See you in the next one.